Good morning, America. How are you? Welcome to Pen Patriots Radio and our show Pushback. This is Carlos Saldivia, broadcasting from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, with my very good friends, Todd Bartlett, here in Williamsport. Morning, Todd. And the great Robert Knorr from Clarion County, sporting a Sporto haircut
Yeah.
and a shave. Must be getting close to the election.
Or my wife forced me to do it, one or the other.
It's funny that you mentioned your wife, because I'm mentioning my wife today in the open. But let me start with this. Never take the left's stupidity seriously. They don't care about equality, and they don't care about race and having a moral compass, and it's just about power in the service of, collapsing the Constitution and replacing it with Marxism. So don't even worry about matching their arguments and bringing up things that are weaknesses in their arguments, because it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter. They're immune to gotchas, and they're immune to any sort of smoking gun, and they're immune to hypocrisy and double standards. They don't care. But what's really more important is that nobody's defending our country. Nobody's defending our country. And with that, with the event last week of the president going into the hospital, the left is literally outraged that COVID didn't kill the president. Literally. Including headlines by the Washington Post. Masks work. Except when Trump wears one. I mean, that's where we're left. I mean, that's what we have. The left is absolutely terrified that people are going to realize that COVID isn't the death sentence that they've shoved down our throat, and that we should be afraid of. I'm not saying that it's not real, but it's ostensibly not real for anyone under 24 years old in this country. Ostensibly. Flu kills 10, 15, 20 times more people in that age range than COVID does. So it's difficult to understand what COVID is, but let's not make believe. Let's not make believe that nobody knew what they were dealing with in the beginning, including the Democrats, which they say they can cure or they can help and they can do something about it only if they get elected. Moving on. So I have someone in my life, and that's my wife, and she's the most important person in my life and has been since I was 21 years old. And there's something that happened this week that I observed that made me recall things in the last 40 years about her. Everybody loves my wife, even people that just meet her. And she's the type of person that if we're at a family gathering at our house and the doorbell rings or someone comes into the house and it's another family member, my wife is the one that runs to the door and hugs and kisses everybody. Hello, how are you? And everybody loves her. Okay. She's the type of person that when she goes to that same setting, and she's the one that's ringing the doorbell when she goes in, she's the one that goes and gives everybody kisses and hugs and is very loving. This is who she is. She's not making it up. This is who she earnestly is. You know who else is who they say they are? President Trump. With all the warts, with all the tweeting. And I'll say as a side note that, you know, when people say to him, "Oh, Mr. President, you should stop tweeting," my retort would be, "Well, guys, you should stop reading them." Because the difference between what he tweets and what he does is planetary in terms of how different it is. It's in a different planet. You know who else is who they are? Vice President Pence. You know who he is, right? You know. Dudley Do-Right. I mean, he's so Dudley Do-Right that he forgot what a smile is. And not that I don't think not that he doesn't understand. It's just he's being who he is. Isn't that more important to you as the American public? Isn't that genuine identity and personality more important than what you saw on Wednesday with Senator Harris? Who is she? What is she? She was trying to turn herself into a pretzel so you could easily suck her through a straw. She will do anything that she thinks will get her votes from any demographic that you happen to bring up. With all the warts, with all the Dudley Do-Rightness, stoicism, and with all the loving care and concern of the three people that I just highlighted, this is what it comes down to. Do you want the real deal with all the problems and all the warts that exist, but you know what the problems and the warts are? Or would you rather have our country be in the hands of people that will do anything to consolidate their power and run down the Constitution and run down our country and never defend it? That's where we are. I know it's astounding after how long, well, my entire lifetime, obviously, the Constitution and the norms have existed, how easily they could be taken away. That being said, I want to welcome in my very good friend, Todd Bartlett. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning, Carlos.
I wanted to ask you, because you're a media guy, so I'll ask you. Why are Republicans the absolute worst at agreeing on presidential debate moderators? How do we get here?
Well, it's as Bob Dole just put it yesterday, and when the venerable Bob Dole, former senator, former presidential candidate, weighs in and says, "Well, you know, there's really no Republicans on that commission for presidential debates." I mean, it kind of makes it simple, doesn't it?
When's the last time we heard from Bob Dole? Like
when Norm Macdonald impersonated him on Saturday Night Live, I think.
97. Well, I'm sure that Rob loves Norm, so he'll YouTube it up in a couple of seconds. But you got a guy who's been solidly in private life coming out and saying something that I'm certain was a pet peeve of his, correct?
Oh, no question. Absolutely no question. And when he's saying there's an anti-Trump movement at the Commission on Presidential Debates, and by the way, for those that are just waking up prior to noon here on a Saturday, the second debate has in fact been canceled.
Right.
And they've cited the fact that the president wouldn't participate virtually because he has COVID. Even though he said yesterday in an interview he could cure everybody that gets COVID because he's tested positive for antibody.
Right. Just unbelievable. But can you give me, based on your experience here in the state and dealing with the executive branch, the way that you have and the access that you've had, explain to us in your most fair journalistic take, why is having a moderator, and oh, by the way, Todd, you've been a moderator, so maybe you can give it to us from that perspective. Tell me what it does to a public that's concerned about their community. What kind of toxicity exists when they see that the moderator isn't being fair? Tell me, just walk me through, and then walk me through what's on your mind and with respect to what you try to do to make certain that you stay within those limits.
So I'm going to go back to the Lycoming County Commissioners debate that had 4 of the 5 candidates at Lycoming College, and we went for the better part of 2.5 hours, right?
2019, right?
Yes.
Spring of 2019.
No. Fall of 2019, leading into
okay. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Yeah.
It was mid to late October, leading into the November election. We had 4 of the 5 candidates on the ballot in the room. And a perfect example is I had asked a question of all of them, and I had asked a policy position question specifically to one of the candidates. And this candidate took great exception, not to the question. I don't know if it was phraseology, whatever, but anyway, my perception was that they were going off like a volcano, and they went a few moments over their time making their point, which, taking the moderator hat off for just a second, just taking that hat off for a second, I felt like they were doing themselves a disservice by continuing to get the shovel out. And I'm getting looks from the other candidates, and I'm going, if you're not picking up on what this candidate just said and is not doing themselves any favors, why would you want to cut them off? Right? They didn't go for an extra minute. They didn't go for an extra 2 minutes. They went for an extra 15, 20 seconds making their point.
Right.
And I gave them direct eye contact as if, okay, your time is expired. We need to move on to a rebuttal from another candidate.
Right. It's your rope, not mine.
I didn't get in their way to step on themselves.
Gotcha.
That's not my job.
Right.
I didn't fact check them in real time. I had my own thoughts. I kept them to myself.
Right.
That's my role as a moderator.
Right. You're not
we
the
don't
star.
have that anymore
they are
at
the star.
national level.
Right.
We just don't.
No.
Carlos, I'm speaking. Carlos, I'm speaking.
You gotta get the smile.
I can't do the smile.
I'm speaking, okay?
Pathetic. Yeah, and just, Carlos, real quick to just answer the general point. That because all of these cultural institutions of power are dominated by the left, they're able to shape things like the Presidential Debate Commission. And the reason is this. The media is 95% against Trump, but they've always been largely against conservative values, even before Trump. And so one of the only chances that the majority of normal Americans that are indoctrinated by the left get to hear from the president that's a conservative is during those debates. And so they get to stack the deck as much as they like. They say, sure, we'll give you your chance to speak to the American people, but everything must be totally controlled by us in the establishment left. And if you say no, well, then you're weak. You were afraid to debate the left. That's exactly what we see happening with this second debate. Republicans are so weak-willed, they've sat there like, you know, in their suit and ties going, yes, that's fine. We could have a serious conversation with anyone moderating. And they don't realize that they're giving up something that's very important. That's how year after year we see these biased moderators. I said it at the beginning. Chris Wallace was the least antagonistical to Trump that we'll see of the three moderators. Now we see Steve Scully, that was supposed to moderate the second one, actually trying to send a private tweet to Scaramucci, anti-Trumper that used to work with Trump, asking him how he should respond to Trump. Does that sound like fair moderation? Actively seeking what to say from anti-Trumpers? Then, of course, he claimed his Twitter account was hacked, as he's been doing for 5 years every time he tweets something and gets caught.
Yeah, exactly right. Last time was being in 2013 or something.
That was a public tweet? Oops.
That was a public? Yeah, it wasn't me.
Oops. What if Edwards called him and said, "Don't push sand"?
Dude, imagine you hack the moderator's tweet that millions of Americans going to be watching, and the best you could come up with as a hacker is to be like, "Hey, what's up, Scaramucci?" That's what you came up with as a hacker. Right. Please, this is don't insult our intelligence, you know.
Yeah. So, Rob, after polling showed the riots were going to cost Biden the election, the totally organic nationwide rioting stopped. How can that be? Are these mob and rioting elements, do they have a direct, not backwater, but front water, through the front gate access to the Democratic Party and the DNC and the candidate?
Yeah. Now, I can't say that they've personally met with Joe Biden or anything, but we could look in microcosms and see that's the case. For example, in Seattle, we know that the mayor of Seattle was meeting with the very person who broke into the Seattle City Council building and demanded that they be removed. We could see all over the place. We know that the mayor of Portland's met with people that were in charge of the organizations that were doing these riotings. We know that they are financed by someone. We know that when you look at where the riots were occurring, they were directed at kind of Trump supporters or in inner city neighborhoods to terrorize civilians. If you really think the system is systemically racist, why wouldn't your protest and riot be at the people that control the system? Instead, it's going to be against civilians. And meanwhile, while all this is going on, coincidentally, we have all these people on the left, whether it be people in Silicon Valley, academia, the media, or the Democratic politicians themselves, that are either making excuses for the riots or pretending they aren't happening. Then once the polling data starts to show, wow, this is one of the biggest issues in the country, people are furious. People, lifelong Democrats in places like Kenosha, Wisconsin, are saying, I will never vote for a Democrat again in my life. They supported this rioting against our community. Then all of a sudden it changed. Never mind the fact, you would think that fair-minded media people would be asking Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, why did you, Kamala, and people on your team, Biden, personally direct people to bail out rioters? Why did you pretend that these weren't happening? Why did you say it was just an idea and not an organization? But instead, we don't get those questions. And now it just so happens that once it turns out those internal polling moments, all of a sudden, all it took was Nancy Pelosi to come out and say, yeah, we're against these riots. We're against them. All of a sudden, they petered out. And that's because whether there be a direct lifeline, which I think you'll find, but clearly as just a normal citizen, I don't have the investigative tools to prove that right now. Hopefully there's an investigation occurring. But even if it's not a direct lifeline, there is no doubt that the movement, Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they are not just movements against violence or against fascism. They are political movements. And they are designed to help the Democratic Party. And so the message was made to them loud and clear. Stop doing this because it's hurting our election chances. Don't worry though, America. If you missed the rioting that was happening in your streets, all you have to do is wait and see if Donald Trump wins. Because if he does, you'll get another 100 days of rioting. But they'll tell you it's Trump's fault. When the left uses violence to intimidate you and uses political violence, that's Trump's fault. So their wager is, vote for us or we'll burn everything down.
Could you do a minute or so on what the difference is between them being a political organization and them being a protest movement?
Yeah, so if something was an organic protest movement, then it would be more concerned with issues and not political parties, right? So, for example, you could be a protest movement that's against government overreach. Antifa is supposed to be just that, by the way. They're anarchists. They're as you mentioned at the top of the show, they're not interested in facts and honesty, so somehow they could be Marxist, which is the biggest possible government, and anarchist, which is no government, at the exact same time. Because they have no common sense. It's just about rioting, pillaging, and power. That's all it's about for them. But if it really was a protest movement and not a political movement, don't you think they would have been upset with left-wing leaders around the world that were locking down under COVID? Can you think of something that's more fascist? Yet, not only did they not protest against that, they actually were in favor. They protested against people that were protesting against the lockdowns. But the difference would be this. If it was just a protest movement, then it would be organic. And even if you disagreed with that movement, it would be based on ideology. If it's a political movement, then the ideology is secondary. What they're really concerned with is getting their people in positions of political power. And as such, they're able to be hypocritical when they want. So they don't have a problem being calm in Beverly Hills. They don't have a problem addressing majority of their violence and anger at Republicans, but allowing Democrats off the hook primarily. And by the way, it's the same reason that things like the Me Too movement weren't protest movements or ideological movements. How do you know? Well, if it was ideological, they would have been against the mistreatment of women. But they're not. They're only against mistreatment of women if it's done by a political adversary. If it's Joe Biden accused, they don't care.
Or if it's a mistreatment of conservative women.
Right. They don't mind that, yeah.
Punctuated by all these women that no one is saying about with respect to the guy that's running, Cal, what's his name, that's running for Senate, the Democrat running for Senate in North Carolina, and
Cunningham,
and Tara Reid, who made allegations against Joe Biden. You must be a Democrat to be able to get away with sexual harassment and rape. You have to be a Democrat. You can't be a Republican, or else you'd be hunted down in the streets.
Well, and this is the difference.
This is exactly the. I'm sorry. This is exactly the double standard that I'm talking about with respect to the Democrats. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And again, I'm sure you feel the same way, Carlos. We don't mean every single person that identifies as a Democrat. Your friend down the street that's a Democrat, probably a good person, and they don't have this double standard. We're talking about the people in positions of leadership of that party. But here's the difference. In general, and again, there are obviously exceptions, but in general, I think one of the things that separates the left and the right is this. The right understands that humans are flawed, and nothing you will do will ever change that. So no matter how hard you fight, and we should be fighting to end racism, racism will always exist. And so we understand that. The left pretends that if you just give them all the power, that they could wipe all the warts of humanity away. So if you just allow the left to have total control, somehow there'll be a utopia where no one dies of diseases like COVID, there is no racism, and things like that. But the problem is, what you see, once they endorse that mindset, this is exactly the mindset that the Bolsheviks adopted, that Stalin and Mao adopted. I don't think they got into power thinking we're going to be bloodthirsty maniacs. They got into power saying we could do what's best for our country, and we have to use force to do it. And each little incremental step that they said will become a little more tyrannical, ended up leading to tens of millions of people dying. This is what we see constantly when it comes to the left. So they're able to brush aside the hypocrisy. It doesn't matter. It's all in the name of the greater good. And so they're able to look at something such as the situation in North Carolina, or they could look, Kamala Harris herself admitted that she believed 4 women that said that Joe Biden sexually assaulted her. Now all of a sudden she's his vice presidential candidate. And no one will deign ask her, like, isn't that repugnant? You really believe do you really believe the guy you work under is a serial sexual assaulter? No one in the media will ask. And keep in mind, this is different. I'm not saying Joe Biden's guilty of that. I believe you're innocent until proven guilty. But Kamala Harris said she believed he was guilty. And so that's the difference. It's one thing to know, hey, the guy I work for has allegations against him, but I don't really believe them. Fine, you keep working there. But if you seriously believe that the person you're working for is a serial sexual assaulter, and you're praising him every day and running as his teammate, something's horribly wrong with you.
Well, if she came on this show, it's the first question we ask her.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Mike Pence, I think, he projects a little more above that fray. So that's clearly something he wasn't going to ask her in the debate. And I don't blame him. It's not really his personality to do such. But yeah, certainly the surrogates of Trump should be out there making this point every single day.
Todd, so I'm going to put something up here. Ellie Bufkin is a reporter for Town Hall and The Federalist. And this was a tweet that she put up. Summer riots have shown small business that anti-racists and their far-left ideology have no problem taking a business down, smashing their windows, and burning their building if they suspect racial malfeasance. Now Yelp is handing them a roadmap. Yelp is basically starting a new policy that says that they will add a badge, a racist badge, flagging businesses that have complaints of them being racist. So what is the difference between Yelp's and just let's just take them at their word, them honestly trying to give you an idea of who these people really are based on crowdsourcing, to progressives jamming Yelp with businesses that they don't like, who they know are conservatively owned, and jamming their page and their profile with racist comments. I went to the restaurant last week and the waitress called me the N-word, and 100 different variations of that type of stuff. What stops the latter from executing the former, in your opinion?
Well, actually, I'm gonna answer the question with a question, if I may. And is this a situation where Jennifer Lake has actually put in her resume for this job with Yelp? The Jennifer Lake that calls everybody here in the Williamsport and Lycoming County area racists. She calls the school district she serves on the school board systemically racist. Can I at least get an answer on that? Did she put her resume in for this particular job?
I'm sure she's listening right now, filling out her resume.
Because it sounds like absolutely something she'd, have the credentials to think she's qualified for.
So, on the question.
Okay.
What is the difference between Yelp offering a service of letting you know what a racist business looks like, as opposed to progressive crowdsourcing a certain business, knowing that it's owned by conservatives?
It's just one more rung in the ladder of the far left of trying to marginalize anybody that doesn't go along for the power grab or their ideology or what they're trying to jam down everybody's throat. And what's to say somebody even has to show up to the business to claim that this racist incident happened? Maybe, you know what? Maybe they'll do exactly what's going on right now here locally with hoaxes showing up for products that aren't even on the shelf. And the reason those products aren't on the shelf is because those corporate grocery stores, right, corporately owned grocery stores, are systemically racist. That's what these knucklehead hoaxers want everybody to believe. It's no different. So does that mean Yelp's going to put a badge on the local grocery store? Which, oh, by the way, once you shut down the grocery store, good luck getting groceries. Right? How do we do that? Are we gonna be doing the deuce and a halves where they're throwing the loaves of bread out of the back of the deuce and a half as they drive by? That's where we're going.
So
because you won't go along for the ride of what we're telling you must do.
Right. Your thoughts, Rob?
I mean, I can't help but look at this in the greater context of what we see going on in the Senate this week and with social media, right? And this might be off track, so bear with me for a minute. So there's a movement that's called a conspiracy movement called QAnon. It's not something that I've partaken in, or I believe I've argued with some of the Q people. I think most of them, though, are just people that are actually trying to research what's considered conspiracies, a lot of which I think is grounded in truth. Things like the corruption of the establishment, the Russia collusion being a hoax, the weaponization of the FBI. One of the things that they talk about a lot is child sex trafficking. And that is a horrible thing that occurs all across the country. But sometimes people might go overboard and specifically accuse someone that they don't have proof of. Well, this was considered troubling enough for, I believe it was the Senate this week, right? Or was it the House? Maybe it was the House, to condemn QAnon. And we know that social media is ripping QAnon posts off of online. This is something that we should all be troubled about, regardless if we believe that or not, if we believe in the ideas of Q or not. Anytime that government and these social media platforms are operating hand in hand to be able to censor people and the information they share, we should be very troubled by this. But what I want to talk about is not the specifics of that for a moment, but the idea of if you label someone, a business, a person, as a potential sexual deviant, like committing heinous sexual crimes with child sex trafficking, then potentially danger could arise. That's the justification that's being used from taking down QAnon. I don't agree that's exactly what QAnon's doing, but you hear their justification. How is that any different than allowing people to smear you without proof or smear a business without proof as racist, when we know that we have an entire summer of people being beaten in the name of anti-racism? In other words, it's clear that the media, social media companies, and our Congress understand, or at least virtue signaling to the idea of, we're worried that people could be unfairly slandered and that could cause violence when it comes to things that could smear liberals. But when it comes to the accusation of racism, something that we've seen, we actually had mainstream outlets in 2016 saying, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Yes. Now it'll be okay for Yelp to call your local business racist with no proof. And then, like this article said, that acts as a roadmap, Antifa will know exactly where to come in your hometown to burn down your business, thanks to Yelp. I hope they get sued into oblivion. I hope that if someone gets physically harmed based on Yelp's slanderous claims that businesses are racist, that they are prosecuted to the fullest extent of law for inciting that violence. That's what I hope happens.
That's a great take. Wilfred Riley is someone we both follow. He's a college professor, and he talks about he does a lot of studies on race and IQ. So he's criticized by many because he believes in IQ, and of course the left does not. His tweet says, 2 predictable effects of Yelp's Scarlet R policy. 1, it will be flagrantly abused with false complaints filed constantly by ex-boyfriends, etc. And 2, a large minority of Yelpers will begin seeking out businesses seen as hostile to Black Lives Matter types or white interlopers. But you had a great take on our
call.
Pre-game meeting last night. Can you talk to me about that?
So the idea that what this will do is you'll actually see a lot of people on the left stop using Yelp as well. First off, you'll see people, just like you see with the NBA, right? Like, somehow professional sports didn't understand who buttered their bread. Do you think the average NBA or NFL viewer was, a liberal that enjoys reading, feminist
the
literature?
PhD that lives in the collar counties of Philadelphia.
Right. Now, not to stereotype, I'm sure there could be extremely left-wing people that like sports, of course. But on average, it was mostly either apolitical or leaning conservative-type people that watch sports. Yet, in the name of being woke, they decided to isolate and to ostracize those right-wing fans. Now we see, for example, the NBA's losing 50% of viewership in their finals, with LeBron James in them, which he's, probably the most watchable athlete in the NBA. So you would expect these finals to be better than in finals he hasn't been in. Well, it's the same.
Finals going on?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing here, right? What they'll do is isolate half the people that use Yelp. However, I think that you'll start to see people on the left. Yes, everything that Wilfred says here is true. The things we've been talking about is true. However, there will be people on the left that just start ignoring Yelp as well. And here's why. What most of these people want to do is just virtue signal how great they are. They don't actually care about, sticking to their convictions or anything like that. So at the end of the day, if they find out that the best curry place in town has a negative Yelp review as potentially racist, they're not going to care. They're going to go to that good curry place anyways. That's the truth. When the cameras are off, when they're not posting on Twitter and Facebook. That's the horrible truth. And thus, Yelp has just made themselves effectually not valuable to any segment of the society other than those, like, you remember the famous case with the Christian bakery, right? What happened in that case was a gay couple decided to go around shopping at different bakeries until they found one that refused to make them a cake. That's the only type of people that this will be useful to. People that want to virtue signal that they hate races, or people that are going out of their ways to make themselves a news story, trying to label people racist. The people that actually want to use the intended service of the product, find places that serve good food, will be completely left in the lurch, making the entire business model of Yelp obsolete. So, hey, if you're an entrepreneur out there, why don't you invest some money in starting a rival service? Because within a year, it's going to go through the roof, because people actually do find a service that says, hey, the food here is good or not, to be a needed service. They don't need people spreading racist lies about places.
And I got to tell you, it's just another one of those things, another cherry on top of the pile of insane things that they are presenting to us in a very straightforward, like going to a restaurant and the very best restaurant in town, and they present it just, picturesquely. Oh no, this will be perfect. This will be great. This will be, good for society. And when you brought up Russia and Stalin and Mao, I part company with you. I've been reading a little bit about Mao and Stalin and mostly from the point of view of Solzhenitsyn. Mm-hmm. Mao wanted to kill people. I mean, he wanted to kill people, and he basically decreed that the only people who were human were the people that were in charge. I mean, this was this is what I liking it to. We're the peasants, especially, right, Todd? Especially with Governor Wolf and his decrees, and these governors across the country and their decrees on COVID. You're not human. You're diseased. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah, it's the theory that they know better because that's why you elected them and put them in charge.
And if they can win that point, then they can treat us exactly like the Marxists treated and Mao and the Maoists treated people in China and Stalin treated people in Russia. What people don't understand is how fast it degenerates into that situation. If Biden wins, the likelihood of us turning into a Venezuela will only be superseded by the fact that it will take 1/10 the time that it took Venezuela to end up the way it is. It started in 1999 in Venezuela when Chavez took over. Look what it is now. Okay, they're the number one most. They're the highest inflation economy in the entire world. It took them 21 years. It'll take us what? What do you think, Rob? It'll take us, I don't know. It's hard to imagine, and I think a lot of it is we have to rely on the fact that if we can win the Senate and or the House, it would forestall some of their things. But what if we don't? What if we lose everything?
Well, I mean, they'll pack the court. They'll effectively own all three branches of government. They'll put through unconstitutional legislation such as ending the Electoral College, open borders. They'll embrace socialism. There will be no check on it. The Constitution will be irrelevant because they've packed the court.
There'll be prosecutions against Trump and Kavanaugh and Bartlett. And that's bizarre to me because I don't know what she's doing.
Yeah, you heard Keith Olbermann, right? Remove them from society.
So yeah, let's talk about Keith Olbermann. Can you talk a little bit about that video?
Yeah, so Keith Olbermann, and for those of you who don't know, formerly of MSNBC, then was on ESPN, then disappeared, thankfully. Now has resurfaced, apparently was on ESPN. Now he's leaving ESPN, and he goes off on a rant that, Trump and his supporters are so heinous that people like Trump and Bill Barr and Durham and Amy Coney Barrett should all be prosecuted and removed from society. I don't know if he means executed or put in re-education camps or prisons, but that's his take. Make no mistake about it, this is the take of many, 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 many people on the left. At least applaud Keith Olbermann for actually saying what many of them are thinking. And we also
I'm going to try to play it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Tell me if you hear it. Tell me if you hear it.
I do not. Nope.
Can you guys hear it?
Nope.
Do you think you could find it, Todd, and maybe play it through yours? Or you, Robert? I know that Jim Hansen tweeted it. But it is one of the most vile minute 23 pieces of political commentary I've ever heard. And vile is being nice.
Okay, tell me if you can hear this.
Okay.
Sponged. The hate he has triggered, the
Nothing?
Pandora's box he has opened.
Just very, very friendly in the background.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how to do it, but
it's okay.
It's just look it up for yourselves if you're listening. Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing about it, right? Okay, let me play devil's advocate. People will say, well, didn't Trump say to lock Hillary up? Yes, for a specific crime, right, that was being alleged. Now, the question of whether or not she committed that crime, she did, but I guess if you're on the left, you could say, I don't see proof of it. Fair enough. Olbermann's suggesting something entirely different. He's suggesting that the mere fact that these people are alive and have a political opinion different than him means that they should no longer be allowed to live in polite society. For example, what is allegedly... He says that Amy Barrett should be locked up. What would her crime be? Being willing to accept a nomination to the Supreme Court? That's her crime, I guess. Or is it that she's pro-life? So lock up anyone who's pro-life? I mean, this is insanity. And it's not surprising. Again, like, Carlos, I talked to you a lot about this. The violence that is prescribed to conservatives and Trump supporters is not a bug on the left. It's not an accident. It's not a fringe element. It is the defining feature. Because if everyone in positions of power of your movement tell you, your opponents aren't just wrong, they're Nazis. What do you do to Nazis? You use violence. You lock them up forever. And so this is the attitude. Carlos, I'm seeing it with people in my life that I consider friends that are 5 years ago, I would consider people I disagreed with politically, but that were remotely rational. I'm seeing them tell me things like, I want Donald Trump to die of COVID because he's literally Hitler. That's what they're telling me. And how do you have a conversation with those people? It's incredible.
So
Let's try this here. Let me see if I can get this to work. Oh, hang on. Give me one more second, all right?
Mm-hmm. Why don't you read the tweet here, Rob?
Okay, it says, Olbermann in his YouTube rant, Trump can be and must be expunged. His enablers, the Mike Lees, the William Barrs, the Sean Hannitys, and the Mike Pences, and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society.
He means politically, right?
No. He literally means removed from our society. Like jailed or executed. Or, I guess, banished.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, go ahead. No, we can't hear it.
I can play it. My audience can hear it because the way my audience...
Hey,
technology is great when it decides it wants to work.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
Darn those tweeters. Right?
Yeah. I mean, this is nonsense. Look, take this in conjunction with the topic we just had about Yelp, right? Imagine going back to Hitler or Stalin or Mao. Understand that the way that they were able to obtain power, it involved causing the populace of their countries to turn on each other. They became agents of the Stasi. They ratted each other out. Imagine that, except 1,000 times worse, because we have social media and things like this Yelp, other things on social media, where you could now, in real time, to millions of people, brand someone with the scarlet letter. You are an enemy of the state. You are an enemy of the rational people of this world. You're racist. You're a sex offender. Like, whatever. You sexually assaulted someone. No proof needed. The accusation's all that's needed to ruin your life. And this is being facilitated by social media groups that basically control the flow of information, that are just an arm of the establishment left-wing and Democrat Party. And this is being encouraged. How many times have we heard Democratic leaders saying, if you see your neighbor without a mask, call someone, right? Report them. Go on social media. Confront them with a camera. Do what you must. If you think they're behaving in a sexist or racist way, confront them. Or as Maxine Waters said, don't leave them comfortable in restaurants. Don't leave them comfortable in the stores. You chase them everywhere you see them. What made this country great, understand, diversity is a good thing. What made the United States different was we respected individuality, but we understood that through that individuality that we could come together with national pride. And we could see that all throughout the 90s even, people were becoming, even things like racial divisions and everything, polling was showing that was all getting better. Look at after 9/11. I don't like a lot of the political decisions we made after 9/11, but the country came together, right? Now it's the exact opposite. We've never been more divided, and the side that's telling us, oh, it's Trump dividing you, they're the ones saying, rat out your neighbor. Everything's a microaggression. Everything's sexist. Everything's racist. And then you have people like this. I mean, it's literally, we talk about this all the time, Carlos, exactly what they accuse you of is what they're doing. They say we're divisive. Meanwhile, you have Keith Olbermann saying, oh, you're a pundit, you're Sean Hannity, you should be locked up and removed from society. Oh, you're Mike Lee, a congressman, you should be locked up and removed from society. For what? What's the specific allegation of the crime? Just, they happen to be conservative, they happen to be Trump supporters. And as always, this is what you see. They're the side that caused the division. They're the side that called us deplorables. They said we were clinging to our guns and Bibles. They called us 10-tooth rubes. They call us racist all the time. They call us flyover country. And then, predictably, what happens is, the person that we vote for is someone that says, you know what, you're not those deplorable things. You're great. This country's great. And you're the backbone of this country. Yeah, finally, because all these worthless Republicans wouldn't defend us, we had someone in Donald Trump that stood up and defended us. So what do?
No one defended this country.
Right. So they blame him for the division that they've been causing for 30 years. They expect us to just sit there and say, you're right. You know, I make $12 an hour, plowing the field so all the wealthy, rich, liberal people in the city could eat. But I have to admit that I have privilege and they're underprivileged and I'm a scumbag and I'm responsible for all these sins of my forefathers and I'm racist and I'm sexist and I'm horrible, and that's what they want. They want you groveling to them, to apologizing for your existence. Those days are over. I don't care if Trump wins this election or not. They are not going to get me to apologize for who I am based on things by my race. I don't care if they end up winning in the end. It's not going to happen.
So what's the difference between a white supremacist and an anarchist? Rob.
Well, so
you know where I'm going, right?
Yes, I do. Right. So, in practice or in theory, you could be a white supremacist.
No, I'm being serious.
Right.
Give me your interpretation of what a white supremacist is versus what an anarchist is.
So there are two things that have nothing to do with one another. A white supremacist has to do with thinking that his race is the white race is superior to other races. A white supremacist theoretically could be a Republican, a Democrat, a communist, a libertarian, a constitutionalist. It doesn't matter. Your political affiliation is not necessary to you being a white supremacist. An anarchist theoretically has nothing to do with race. An anarchist has to do with not believing that there should be any sort of government. So theoretically, you could be a black supremacist anarchist. You could be a white supremacist anarchist. You could be, a total egalitarian when it comes to race anarchist. The reason you're bringing this up is because we were told by Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, that, we were told that there's a plot to kidnap her by 6 people. And Whitmer said this was because Trump said of the Proud Boys, by the way, a multiracial group that has nothing to do with race whatsoever, because Trump said to them, stand back and stand by, that's the reason that this kidnap plot came. Unfortunately, these so-called white supremacists, there is I haven't seen evidence of them being white supremacists. What I have seen evidence is of them embracing anarchism, of them saying Trump was a tyrant, and of them going to and supporting Black Lives Matter movements. Sounds awfully strange for Trump supporting white supremacists that are out there condemning him, condemning the state and the Republican and Democrat Party because they don't believe in government, and going to Black Lives Matter rallies. But Gretchen, again, go ahead.
Like it or not, does the president control most of the institutions in this country?
No.
Under his aegis of being the president? The answer is yes, even though there's a lot of deep state people that control it and
yeah.
block him, correct?
Yeah, he really doesn't have.
Right.
If he had control, the coup would have been
Okay.
outed. But yeah.
So it's Trump's FBI, right?
No.
It is Trump's FBI.
I mean, you can say that, but it's not.
Trump's FBI that caught him, right?
I mean, I
Right.
guess I see where you're going,
Right.
but
Right. No, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying not to judge these people. I'm trying to understand exactly what the hell it is they're talking about, because they're confusing the hell out of everybody. And if Trump didn't care, okay, and I ask this all the time about race, you think cops are racists? Listen, you don't understand. You don't know racism. If you think cops are racist, you don't know racism. Here's what racism looks like. You're a black cop and you walk into the squad room, and in a racist, systemically racist department, nobody talks to you ever. Ever. No one's answering your calls. No one's backing you up. No one says good day. No one says good morning. No one says good night. And oh, by the way, we're actively plotting against your death. That's what a systemically racist police department looks like. Is that the one that's in your town?
not at all. Look,
Good.
this whole story, it's real simple.
If the president is racist and he hates Whitmer, why would he send the FBI to arrest these guys? Why? Explain it to me. Take that point in debate and debate me on this just for like 30 seconds for fun, so people can get an idea of what it looks like. You be the leftist.
Okay. You're going to lose, though. You're going to lose this one, because here's what my argument would be as a leftist. Show me 1 ounce of proof that Trump was aware of the FBI investigating this.
There is no proof.
Okay. So then Trump had nothing to do with it.
There's a mandate, right? There's a mandate to go out and get the bad guys. But the question is there a mandate to go out and get Governor Whitmer? See, that's ridiculous.
Right,
That's
but
ridiculous.
Look, but this is what the left would say. You have no evidence Trump was personally involved in this. You spent 3 years saying that Trump doesn't.
So why are you
control the
accusing
FBI.
him? So why are you accusing
Well, that's
him?
okay, but that's a different question altogether. That all they're doing at this point is rebutting.
Am I doing the leftist convoluted argument thing well?
Right, it is.
Come on, Rob. The president did tweet "Liberate Michigan." What were
Right,
you supposed to think when he said that?
Michigan.
Come on, Rob.
Here's the easiest way to look at this story. 2 weeks ago, a leftist that was armed to the teeth sent ricin to the president of the United States. Had Trump stood up and said, "Oh, this is because Nancy Pelosi's rhetoric against me or Joe Biden's rhetoric against me," what would the reaction of the left be? Oh, Trump's politicizing this. There's no evidence that Joe Biden or Nancy Pelosi inspired this. How dare he? This is disgusting. Using a serious thing like this, he wanted to be attacked like this so he could use it. However, Gretchen Whitmer does it, and, oh yeah, this is Trump's fault. Or let's say that a Bernie supporter goes up and shoots a bunch of Republicans at a ball field, including Steve Scalise. Is that Bernie's fault? Is that Pelosi's fault for their rhetoric? Nope. But if Congressman Gifford gets shot by a right-winger, oh yes, now all of a sudden it's the right's fault. You starting to see how this game works? Even when you have horrible people that do horrible things, that in their statement say, "I hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump is part of the reason I'm taking these actions. My hatred for him," such as the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter, who was furious that he thought that Trump sold out white people by endorsing Jerusalem as being the site of the embassy. They still blame Trump for that. So even when the killer says, "I hate Trump, I think he sold out," Trump's actually supporting Jews. Even then, they say Trump's responsible. So it doesn't matter. This is what the left does. So that's the best argument. It's just like you have a clear double standard. The people that did this hated Trump. They're anarchists. They attended Black Lives Matter rallies. And so for Gretchen Whitmer, either she was ignorant of those facts and just assumed it was Trump's fault, which is heinous, or she was aware of those facts and intentionally misled people. Either way, she's disgusting.
Well, and the other thing is that I have to comment on looking at the video and listening to this guy, Brandon Caserta. Listen, I understand. I am thankful that the governor is safe and wasn't kidnapped. Okay, and I am thankful for the FBI for doing what they did. But can we not make believe that this operation was barely a step above like a wayward D&D, you know, scenario? Okay, these guys had 20 sideds in their pockets. Okay, come on. These guys, they couldn't kidnap the governor if I don't know if they had invisibility spells.
Look, it's to me, I don't have all of the details of this case. I just think it's a red herring. It's terrible.
I'm being sarcastic, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Or cynical, but you know what I mean.
But this reeks of the same thing we always hear. So as a Ron Paul supporter, I remember fervently pushing back against the FBI when they talk about all these terrorist plots that they foil. It's something like over 90% of terrorist plots that the FBI foil have been created and inspired by the FBI themselves. So what they'll do is find some agitated youth and they'll go up to him and say, yeah, let's put that anger to work. How would you like to build a bomb and do some real damage? And then they train that person and they radicalize them for months and months and months. And then before the person actually sets off the bomb, they arrest them and go, see, we've kept you safe. Even though they're the ones who radicalized that person in the first place. I don't have proof that's what happened here, but it sounds an awful lot like that. The FBI agents infiltrated a bunch of online tough guys that are incompetent, that were anarchists saying, we don't want any government. And they were like, hey, would you like to do something about it? And they convinced these people to say, sure, we'll be involved in this plot. And then they arrested them. I don't know if that's what happened. That's what it looks like to me. Stereotypical FBI, we kept you all safe by radicalizing someone and then arresting them at the last minute. By the way, probably what happened with the Las Vegas shooter as well. That guy was probably involved with gun running for the FBI, and they thought, well, he's useful to us, and before he becomes a problem, we'll arrest him. Oops, he committed the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. Now we're just going to pretend we have no idea why it happened. Isn't it funny how the FBI, anytime it's someone on the left or on the establishment that there's a plot they're after, instantly the FBI can find out what's going on and the motivations. But when it's a bunch of right-wingers being executed in the biggest mass shooting in the history of the country, all of a sudden they're clueless. They have no idea what happened. Isn't that strange how it works that way?
It is a little bit strange. Yes.
And an $800 million civil settlement to the victims, of which I believe the casino only paid like 10% of that,
Yep.
and the insurance company paid the rest.
Yep. I'll bet you.
$800 million.
Yep. I'll bet you if it was a rap concert that got shut up, that was, sponsoring Joe Biden's campaign or something, like, God forbid, by the way, it's heinous. I don't want anyone to die. Any death in a political motivation or any murder like this is heinous. But I bet the FBI would have found a motivation, right? It's always this way. Every time that it's something shady and all of a sudden you find out, wait a minute, the FBI story, remember, they changed their story multiple times. But anyways, that's a different topic. I'm just saying, with this story, it's just quite simple. This is nothing new. Like, newsflash, nutbags out there will want to do nutbag things. The ability, because they control all the institutions, of the left to link any nutbag that might have right-wing feelings to you as a regular Trump supporter or as a Republican is impressive. It's impressive how skilled they are at doing that. Meanwhile, their people could literally shoot a Republican ball field and say, I'm doing this because Bernie Sanders said your healthcare plan will kill millions of people. And they're like, we don't see how left-wing rhetoric contributed to that. What are you talking about? Condemn all violence when the left does it. Condemn right-wing violence when the right does it. And they arbitrarily changed the definition of left and right to suit their needs so they could make regular Republicans seem more extreme.
My favorite part of that commentary is the fact that nutbags have nuts.
Right.
And oh, by the way, the end of the civil litigation and the settlement ends discovery, ends any probity. Any information that was going to be gleaned is now sealed in the hands of law enforcement.
Right, all the good stuff.
Well, I'm sure they won't smash the evidence with hammers. There's no precedent for the FBI doing that, right?
No. So let me ask you this.
They'll just claim no records exist, even though they've reviewed the records and they can't find them.
Right. Yep.
So speaking of records that you can't find, Todd, can you update us on what the current situation is with Attorney General Barr and his investigation of the Durham report. It looks like nothing's going to come out indictment-wise before Election Day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and one of his guys, I believe, that was looking into another aspect of the case, and I want to say it was the U.S. attorney out of Texas, this week resigned to take a job in the private sector. So Barr had to go scrambling to find another U.S. attorney to pick up where that guy left off and continue that case. In regard to the Durham report, we're getting the drip, 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 okay? And why you're not going to see, potentially why you won't see indictments between now and the election, is that the Department of Justice does not want to have an influence on the election, right? Where have we heard this argument
like
before?
Comey did.
Correct. However, there's a wild card in this. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, it's Rick Grenell. And Grenell has come in and found the documents that should be declassified. He's recommended that they get declassified to the president. The president's gone out and tweeted and ordered that any of these documents in the Hillary email scandal that can be declassified without harming the investigation that Barr's doing, that Durham's doing, everything else, get declassified. And lo and behold, what have we found? The whole hoax was started by the Democrat nominee in 2016, and it goes all the way to the top. Biden,
Like to the
Obama,
top. Like
To
the
the
real
entire
top.
Obama administration, upper echelon knew, right? That's all documented. And these are not handwritten notes of the current president, by the way. This all predates him being in the White House. It all predates him.
Right.
And now it's all
Right.
being released to the public. It's being
By 7
declassified
months.
to the
Yep.
public.
Right. So,
And by the way, the media coverage on it is almost nothing.
right. And for clarity's sake, Hillary Rodham Clinton cooked up, and her team cooked up an idea to tie the president to Russian patronage to try to throw the election, to cover for the fact that she had 33,000 emails in a private server in her basement bathroom. And that's where the idea started. And Brennan, who was the head of the CIA for Obama, briefed the president in September and then again sometime in December, I believe. I am itching to hear your thoughts on Barr and Durham and not releasing the report, Rob.
They're either part of the cover-up against Trump, the part of the coup, so they're covering up the coup, or they're incompetent. It's that simple.
Why is it not a fair criticism of his actions that he does not want to affect the election?
Because he's had 3 years. It's that simple. For example, we know that the IG Horowitz recommended criminally prosecuting Comey back in 2018, 2019. Barr declined. The reason that Barr declined, I was told by all the Trump supporters, is, because Barr's going to get him on other issues. Well, it's irrelevant now. If Trump loses the election, that's it. It all goes away. All the work that Barr and Durham have been doing, and by the way, it predates Barr and Durham as well, right? Supposedly Sessions was doing stuff. Supposedly Huber was doing stuff. All of these people were investigating this for years, for 3 years now. All of it is irrelevant if Trump loses. It's irrelevant. The media is not going to cover it. It won't be a story.
So what you're saying is that he should not get a pass because Barr thinks that it takes a little bit over 4 years to come up with charges against these people, or at least a resolution of exactly what happened, and the fact that he wants to wait and not affect the election is a non-starter.
Right, go ahead, Todd.
May I posit a theory, gentlemen?
Don't interrupt me. Am I doing this
I'm
right?
speaking.
It's my time.
I'm
It's my
speaking.
time. It's my time. It's my time. Thank you.
You gotta get the
It's my
smile.
time.
You gotta get the.
It's my time.
I don't get the
speaking.
smile. Yeah, I don't do
my
the
time.
smile.
It's my time. Thank you. It's my time. It's my time. Mr. Vice President, it's my time.
Okay.
So let me posit a theory.
Okay.
You're not seeing anything going on right now with indictments because They're going to wait. They're going to wait for the election. They're going to see who wins. And let me just run this by you. If Trump wins, you'll see indictments. Okay? Because what are you going to do to a second-term lame duck president? You're gonna impeach him again? You're going to do this? You're going to do that? They've already done all that.
Right. Governor Wolf has taught us that.
So let me run it the other way. Biden wins. There are indictments soon after the election, November, December, between then and the inauguration. Joe Biden is inaugurated president. Kamala Harris is inaugurated vice president. Joe Biden then pardons everybody within the first 90 days of his administration. And let's just say the Democrats keep control in the House. Pelosi's still the speaker. Pelosi rams home the 25th Amendment idea. Biden is removed as president by Kamala Harris and the entire cabinet. Kamala Harris then steps in and says, oh, by the way, since Joe pardoned everybody, we should really look at who was in the White House the last 4 years, and we should really look at that. And whoever the new AG is immediately launches an investigation in the former president for occupying the White House. They've already gamed this out. They want to see Trump and everybody else in jail.
How did they recruit Barr?
I'm not saying he's a part of it. Yes.
Well, he has to be, because that scenario all is based on Barr not doing anything.
But what if all of the movement is beneath Barr and the train has already left the station to the point he can't stop it?
So they're using Barr's personal pride of not staining his reputation of 30 years in Washington against him. Is that what you're saying?
And he'd rather resign than be that guy.
Can you poke holes into that, Rob? That idea?
Yeah, I'd poke holes. I don't care. It's garbage. Barr sucks. He's worthless. That's it. That's the poking holes. I mean, I have nothing to say about it. I'm just Joe Schmo.
I know you're really mad at him.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I was able to prove definitively the same crime. That the only thing that the Mueller report was able to do was to point to a bunch of Russian trolls that they then had to drop the charges against because they didn't have evidence that they were working on behest of the Russian government, and then charge a bunch of people for lying to investigators. Something that I could prove definitively that Brennan, Clapper, McCabe, and Comey did. The IG actually recommended criminal prosecution of Comey. Yet Barr said, what did Barr not want to influence the 2020 election back in 2018? Is that why he chose to allow these crimes to go unprosecuted then? So I don't want to hear Barr's sob story. Hey man, Barr gets what he deserves. Todd's absolutely right about what's going to happen. The lesson learned is this. The left understands a fundamental truth about humans. And it's ironic because I just got done saying the right usually understands more about this. But here's what the left understands. That processes will repeat themselves unless grave punishment is inflicted. And so, for example, if you go back to...
It's like raising kids.
Right. If you go back to the 2008 financial crisis, do you think that any of the bankers learned their lessons when they were given a wag of the finger and say, don't do that again? No one got prosecuted. You think they changed their ways? I don't. So what they're understanding is, you know what Trump's crime was? He challenged the hegemony of power that the establishment left and right has. Chuck Schumer told us in no uncertain details, you can't criticize the intel community because they'll find 6 ways from Sunday of getting back at you. That was Trump's crime. Watch the impeachment of Trump again. Watch those State Department employees. Watch people like Comey and Brennan and Clapper. They are indignant. How dare a president come in and challenge our authority? We're in charge. Did you see all those State Department people? They said it over and over again. Trump challenged established foreign policy. Trump is the foreign policy.
Vindman,
He's the elected.
Vindman, leading the charge is Vindman.
Right, Vindman, Yovanovitch, George Kent, all of these people, right, that were involved in the impeachment. So what they're going to do with the Democrats, it's not enough for them to just win the election and brush it aside. They're going to make an example of Trump and anyone that was connected to them. They're going to get them locked up for any crime they can. They're going to go through their life. They're going to go through all their finances. They're going to raid their lawyers. Everything that you saw, all the people connected to Trump in 2016, People like Devin Nunes and people like, you'll probably even see it like people like Dan Bongino, people in the media. We already know Yovanovitch's State Department was spying on all these people. They're going to make it so that every one of us know, don't you ever think you could elect someone that's not controlled by our interest. Don't ever do it. We will ruin your life. We will end you. That's the example. And it's not enough to just do it in private. It needs to be public. The world needs to see. Don't you ever challenge these people. My friends on the left will cheer for it. Yay! They'll say, yay! Now let's just get a real progressive in there that'll end wars. And it will never happen. And Jill Stein and Tulsi Gabbard, they'll go through the same crap. And you know who's to blame? Most of all, clearly the people that are doing it. But you know who's to blame most of all? Bill Barr and Durham. So although for the sake of being polite, I will defend them against these political prosecutions that come their way. But through the principles of karma, they deserve it because they allowed a coup to occur. And if the president loses because of that coup, then I don't want to hear their crying when they say, why are we being targeted now? You failed. Unless Barr was in on it all along, and so he's sparing his own head from the chopping block by throwing Trump under the bus and hiding this from all the coup providers.
So that was about 2 minutes of the greatest things I've ever heard you say. And my thoughts on it are that if you don't have consequences, bad things will happen. Horrible things will happen. And this right here, Rob and Todd, right here, what we're talking about right here is exactly why more than 60 million people in this country don't vote.
Why would you? Nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
Look.
Why would I vote when Barr isn't doing his job and is using the excuse of a precedent with Comey and the fact that he wants to protect his reputation in 30 years in the business, to not tell the truth. To not tell the truth. You're staking your reputation and you're staking the future of our country to withhold the truth from the American people. Why can't you open your statement by saying that you're concerned about your own reputation, but when you think about it, the more important thing is not what your status is, not what your safety is, but the safety of the community and the country, and to tell the country the truth so they can decide for themselves like they should have done with the coronavirus. This is the part that I don't understand. And this is the part why a lot of people refuse to talk about politics, because they don't think it makes any difference when there are no consequences levied against people who do and commit criminal acts.
I mean,
does anybody really believe that Comey is innocent?
Look, it's real simple. Like, for example, let's go back to the Hillary investigation. Hillary deleted subpoenaed emails. Period. That's it. We know that, right? That's a crime.
Right.
They tried for a year. They tried to get
federal
Trump,
crime, right?
They tried to get Trump on obstruction of justice for things like he tweeted out mean tweets about the Mueller investigation. Oh, that's obstruction. Now, if only Trump, instead of tweeting out those tweets, if only Trump would have just deleted 30,000 pieces of email that Mueller asked for, then apparently the left would say, oh, yeah, it's very reasonable. Everything that they accuse Trump of doing, they've actually done. Imagine Donald Trump paying a foreign spy to go to somewhere like China, having his FBI, or paying this foreign spy to go to a known Chinese spy that the FBI said in 2009 was trying to damage national security. So Trump pays to get dirt like that, takes that dirt, then gives it to his stooges in the FBI that say we need an insurance policy against Joe Biden. Then they proceed to spy on Joe Biden's campaign with wiretaps on members of his campaign, getting confidential emails and things like that, sending actual human assets like Stephen Halper and Azra Turk to spy on members of that campaign. Then they start leaking to the press details of things they find. Then they start a special counsel investigation. Then they raid their lawyers' offices in the middle of the night. Then they entrap them like they did with Flynn. And imagine that Trump did all of this. Do you think that the left and the media would go, well, it's perfectly reasonable? China's clearly our enemy. China's clearly trying to interfere in the election. So this was all in the up and up. It's all reasonable. Then we find out 3 years later, oh, Trump made all this up. His team made it all up. This was their plan all along. The FBI was in on it. They had 17 errors in omission in spying on the campaign of Joe Biden. Do you really think the left would be like, well, we can't investigate this until after the 2024 election, right? It would be unfair to look at it before the election if Donald Trump engaged in a coup and weaponized the FBI to try to take down the sitting president. That would be unfair to look at that until the next election. Do you think that's what they would say? If this was done in the reverse, Donald Trump would have been in prison in 3 months. Period. But because it was Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and James Comey, they're out there they're laughing at you. Look at what James Comey...
Literally, they're laughing at
They're selling books. They're celebrities of the left. There's people
they're
like...
on
There's
CNN.
people... I mean, it's unbelievable. I talk to people...
If anyone should be on CNN, it should be Todd, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
You remember in the debate when Senator Harris caught herself in a response because Pence had gotten her to go on tilt, and she said, all the Trump administration is about is undoing any good piece of By the way, I wanted to say, and she immediately pivoted.
Right.
She was about to utter this phrase. The Trump administration is all about undoing everything in the Obama administration.
No, she
and
did
that
say
fundamentally is what this is about.
Right. That's exactly right.
And with respect to everything that Rob just detailed, I want the American public to understand that Joe Biden is up by 14 points in the polls.
Well, I don't believe the polls, but to me, the polls.
I'm trying to be polite.
Right.
I'm trying to be, trying to be fair. So, I will defer to you, Todd, with respect to what your experience with debate and your experience with journalism and your experience with politics. Explain to me how we could have what's happened in this country for 4 years, and especially since March, or more so since May 26th, and have what's happened equal Biden up by 14 points. Explain it. Just explain to me like if you were talking to a 6-year-old.
Let me give you real world examples. Okay. To disprove the theory that Joe Biden is up double digits in the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth.
Well, he's up by 9 in Pennsylvania, or no? Do you know what the latest numbers are, Rob? It's 9.
The average, I think, 9.
Okay.
The RCP.
Yeah, so it's anywhere. It's been fluctuating anywhere from 5 to 10,
right.
depending on what poll you're looking at.
Right.
But he's up, right? He's up so far that the Secretary of State yesterday in the state of Pennsylvania did a photo op that she voted.
Right.
Right.
I saw that.
Which, if he's up by 9, why are they doing that? Why am I getting 4 and 5 notes a day from the administration about vote, 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 vote? If he's up by that kind of margin, it should already be over. If he's up by 9. Okay, so let me give you two real world examples. The president was at Harrisburg International Airport and had tens of thousands of people. The numbers of the crowd I heard were between 15 and 20,000 people, right? Joe Biden came to Gettysburg for a 22-minute speech, no questions from the media, and had 16 people, 16 donors.
How many of those were media people?
3 of whom showed up late and were turned away at the gate.
Oh, that's delicious.
16 people
showed
up to Gettysburg for a Biden event. And you want this state to believe he's up by 9? If Trump said, I'm going to be in Gettysburg and I'm going to hold a rally, 30,000 people would show up.
Spontaneously.
Spontaneously. He's coming, 30,000 people. And Biden's up by 9?
Your analysis on that, same question, Rob.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, just real quick, I think the polls are a lie to gaslight us so that when they steal the election, which I expect them to do, I expect Trump to lose, they'll say, what do you mean we stole the election? Biden was up by 9 in Pennsylvania. He won by 4. That's actually, Trump did better than anticipated. So when they use their mail-in ballot schemes and whatever else they do, it'll make it look legit when they steal it. That's my theory on it. We'll see what happens. But I'm pessimistic. I think that any party that is willing to send elderly people to death sentences by intentionally infecting them with COVID, sending COVID people to nursing homes, that is willing to encourage riots and the burning down of the great cities of this country, I don't think they're going to be like, well, but election fraud's a bit too far for us. Don't think it's going to happen. We see the consequences, as both you and Carlos have said, Todd, of what's going to happen if Trump wins, prosecutions of these people, and so they're not going to take chances. That's why they're gaslighting us with these polls. Now, to the extent of should Trump be winning by even more, or how can it be, even if the polls aren't real, how can there be so much opposition to Trump if good things have been happening? Well, it's simple. Did you ever watch, like, I use sports analogies, but you'll have a team, like baseball is the best example I can think of. You'll have someone that's like your high-paid slugger, right? And he's in the 4th slot or the 3 slot, and the guy's batting .230 with 20 home runs, right? And then there's some no-name in front of him. Not flashy, but, his on-base percentage is 415, and, he runs batted in, everything's superior. Yet all of the commentators are constantly like, oh, this slugger, the veteran slugger, oh, he's the heart and soul of the team. It doesn't matter what people can see with their own eyes, because everyone in positions of authority are telling everyone, it's this guy that's the key. It's this guy that's the superstar. That's what everyone believes. It's the same way here. It doesn't matter what reality is. We live in a post-reality world. Facts don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. For example, the same polls, right? And this is, again, I'm saying the polls are garbage, but the same polling company like Gallup that has Biden up double digits also just did a poll around the same time where over 56% of people said their life's better off now than it was 4 years ago. Now, normally, that's the only thing that matters. Well, that's a landslide for the incumbent then. More than 10% of people think their life's better now than it was 4 years ago. That's a landslide. And yet, those same polls show Trump down double digits. Why? Well, because the right lost the culture war. And this is something that the left, give the devil their due, they understood. The establishment understood this. It doesn't matter if they win individual elections. They got all the time in the world. But while we were busy trying... Yeah,
were you busy what?
While we were busy trying to win elections, they were taking over our schools, they were taking over Hollywood, they were taking over Silicon Valley, they were taking over the media, and now we're to the point where they could win every election if they win this one because the facts don't matter. They just create the reality that they want people to see. Well, Trump, look at Kamala Harris, how many times she lied in that debate. Look at the stories she told that, okay, we won't say they're complete lies.
God, the Lincoln one was just horrifying.
Lincoln, right? Or how about this? Trump said that soldiers were suckers and losers. That was never proven. She said the Russia bounty story. That was debunked by the intelligence community. She said the good people hoax that Trump called Nazis good peoples. That's a blatant lie that even the BBC debunked, and I've spent years debunking. But it doesn't matter. I talk to my friends, and they're like, oh, did you see Kamala Harris? Yep, she brought up Trump said Nazis are good people. Trump never said that. Oh, yeah, he did. I heard it with my own ears. That's how powerful the establishment left has become. Facts don't matter anymore. You can show the clip of Trump saying there were good people on both sides. Of course, not the neo-Nazis or the KKK. They're terrible people and I condemn them. And it won't matter to the left. They're just like, it's incredible. It's an incredible bug of the human feature that facts don't matter.
So I wanted to make sure that I interjected and told you that I saw a billboard in Williamsport 2 days ago. And it had a picture of a very, 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 very young Joe Biden. And it said something to the effect, what is it that Trump allegedly called? Oh, not a sucker. That was the billboard. Joe Biden as a very, very, very young man. And I can't remember what the first line was, but the second line was, not a sucker. in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is very heavily Republican, but your I have 3 points I want to make, and I want you guys to comment on. Did you see the gun registrations and the gun sales since January? Have you seen those numbers? 30 million new gun owners.
It's irrelevant. And I'll tell you why. Because when one of those gun owners has to pull their gun out to defend themselves because the local chief mayor doesn't allow the police to intervene, those people will be arrested, and the rest of us will remain silent. Just like happened to the McCloskeys.
Who will they vote for, and how many of those are independents?
Who cares if they steal the election? They'll pack the Supreme Court. None of it will matter. I mean, it's
so
the end of the country.
You don't think that anybody that has bought a gun this year is going to vote Republican?
Oh, they will. Why does it matter if they steal the election?
So what's the number that Trump has to have to win the election?
20% maybe, Lee? How would you know? They did this to Ron Paul, right?
I don't. I'm asking.
Yeah, that would be my guess. I don't know. Like, I remember with Ron Paul, and I talked to you about this on the phone one night, following this in 2008 and 2012, where, see, there are districts that are smaller, but that are in urban areas, and bigger that are in rural. So you might have a rural voting district that has 20,000 people that vote, and an urban voting district that only had 7,000 that vote. So the importance is we're not talking about a divide between rural and urban when I say this. But what ended up being seen was in small districts where it was easy for people to talk about who they voted for, Ron Paul did incredible. But in the bigger districts, all of a sudden that dropped off almost totally. And it was because you couldn't talk to your friend. You don't know 30,000 people that voted. Oh, Ron Paul got 8 votes. Well, yeah, me and my 6 friends, I guess that was it. In the small district where only 30 people vote, hey, 11 of us voted for Ron Paul, but we looked at the numbers and it said only 1. Right?
So you're saying that in the ballot, in the voting precincts, where there is a Republican and a Democratic witness, both of them looked the other way as they harvested votes from Rand Paul.
Well, I don't even know if it has to be the physical person that was there. How do you know, like, what the computer information's putting in? Right? And there's been tons of information, for example, that Diebold voting machines.
But there's usually an escort of these things all the way back to the county from these precincts. And that I think is going to be one of the important aspects of what we do this year, is to have witnesses and attorneys at every precinct to be able to keep an eye on those votes. And make sure that the actual tally is legitimate. I don't know if a judge of elections at a precinct can jimmy rig computer numbers at the precinct level. I think it's done at the county level, where a county official that's leading the voter services can do that, or lie on the count. I don't know how.
Let me just say this,
and I don't know how to reconcile what your example of Dr. Paul, but whatever it is, it's horrifying.
Well, look, we've known, for example, that we've seen people that college-level first-year engineer students that were able to create a voting machine that would give the exact predicted results. If they wanted candidate A to win 51-47, they could do that, no problem. So it's not just the computers, which we've had credible allegations, and I'm not just talking Democrats cheating. By the way, there were credible allegations of 2004 Ohio election of an incumbent Republican that it seemed likely that the voting...
In the North Carolina case, right?
Right, and then you had the Debbie Wasserman Schultz case. Do you remember this? This had nothing to do with electronic ballots, but remember that she was facing a progressive challenger in the Democratic primary, and then all of a sudden, one of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's team took a whole van full of ballots that then just appeared for 2 hours, and although it appeared she was leading, that person later showed up with the van, and surprise, surprise, the majority of the ballots in that van were for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and she ended up winning. I don't know. I'm not someone who's an expert at cheating. I'm not good at it. What I'm telling you is this. They'll find a way, right? We literally live in a system. We live in a country right now where we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the FBI was weaponized to spy on Trump based on allegations created by Hillary Clinton that were false, and no one cares. No one cares. That's provable. You can see that with your own eyes, and no one cares. So do you think that all of a sudden people are going to be like, well, let's be incredibly skeptical about how this voting system's having here. When we have judges that are saying, oh, you can hand ballots in up to 2 weeks over that. We'll send universal mail-in ballots to everyone. The process is so big and so convoluted. They're stacking the deck in every possible way. Not just in physically rigging votes, but they're also stacking the deck in the control of information, of lying, of stacking the Presidential Debate Commission to be against Trump. Every single area it is stacked against Trump and the conservatives. And that, I believe, I hope I'm wrong, but I believe that'll be enough to steal the election.
Tell me about voter registrations, Todd. Almost every single precinct in every single county, the voter registrations for Republicans are through the roof. Will that affect the election, do you think?
I want to give you some data real quick that just came out.
All right, but answer my question first.
Will it affect anything? Republicans are going to turn out
the numbers are disproportionate, even in democratically held counties.
Yeah, you're going to see voter turnout on the Republican side in historic numbers.
And what do you think? What do you think the translation of gun owners and new guns bought north of 30 million since January? How does that translate with respect to votes, in your opinion?
I think it correlates directly. I think there has been conversation for decades about there was going to be a revolution someday, or there's going to be an invasion, or whatever it was going to be, right? We're going to prepare, and we got doomsday preppers, everything else, right? I don't think anybody ever fathomed the idea of a coup against the sitting president.
Never.
And we're living it right now.
Right. Unquestionably.
We're living it.
As Rob alliterated clearly just today. So what is your other piece of information that just came out?
So along with the numbers and the data and voter registration and those kind of numbers, the case counts just came out from the Department of Health. They have not put out their daily press release yet, but the numbers have been updated for the day. Lycoming County is now at 28 deaths with 2 new deaths added.
Okay.
11 new positive cases.
Right.
So I believe it's, I think it's 818 now positive.
Okay.
But there was one number that was missing on the report.
Hospitalizations.
Negatives.
Okay.
Negative test results for the entire state on a county-by-county breakdown were not in today's report.
Right.
If you go to the dashboard...
What does that mean?
There's over 2 million negative tests. I'm one of the only media outlets in the state, if not the only one, that on a daily basis reports the negative number.
Right. They didn't
As
do
of
it
yesterday,
today.
it was over 14,000 negatives since the beginning of March. Right?
Right.
14,000 negatives compared to just over 800 positives. And of the 800 positives, it's like almost 50 probables, right?
Okay.
The science ain't there anymore, guys. The science was never there from the jump.
Right.
Now you're going to tell me that on a Saturday, and we don't get a Sunday report anymore, the negative results for the entire state on a county-by-county basis are gone for the day? I think that's a very telling move by the Department of Health.
Look, everything... Let me just... I would love to talk about COVID for 15 hours, right? Because this is going to be one of the issues that is central. It's probably the most important issue at this point for why people will vote. So let me just talk about this from the mile-high view, just a brief overview. We all acknowledge that not only is this important for the election, but it's important for the safety of our country, right? The economic safety, the physical safety. Can you explain to me one other country that calculates COVID deaths in 50 different ways? So we don't have a universal way of what we determine as a COVID death. We allow each state to do it. Any other countries that are doing that? I don't know of any. No. Do you,
None.
Todd, as much, more than any journalist I think that I've seen in the country, you've been looking into the COVID story. Are you confident that you could explain to me, let's just take 3 states near us, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York. Are you confident you could explain to me the differences in how they calculate COVID deaths?
Everybody has a different way of doing it. And this is what's even funnier. The governor and the secretary of health say there's no federal plan. Oh, just like there's no coroner's plan because you cut them out of how we were going to record COVID deaths from the beginning? Is that similar to that? And oh, by the way, when I asked you directly, Governor, if you're going to lay 200,000 national deaths and 8,000 COVID deaths in Pennsylvania at the feet of President Trump, if that's the same threshold, should the nursing home deaths that occurred in the state on your watch, on your and Secretary Levine's orders to send COVID positive patients back into nursing homes, is that not your responsibility? He had no answer. And I haven't received an advisory on where the governor is going to be in the better part of a week.
Now, listen, I just want to say this to everyone. So basically what you said, Todd, is each state does it differently, and no one knows, however. There's not one person that could tell you, here's how every state's doing it. We're basically clueless. We're basically told, here's the number that have died, now shut your mouth and accept it. Don't ask questions. Just like we were told, here are the lockdowns, shut your mouth and accept it. Just like we were told, these COVID patients are going into nursing homes, and when people like us said, whoa, that's a terrible idea. Why would you intentionally infect the most vulnerable population? We were told, shut your mouth and accept it. So now the most important issue, not just of this election, but in the country, for the country's well-being right now, we don't know anything. The average person has no clue. They just say, 200,000 dead. Yeah, that must be the number.
Well,
if we're getting spikes now, after we flatten the curve, case spikes, and we're all doing this universal masking thing, does that mean that masks don't work if we're getting case spike numbers?
Of course not. Hey, listen, I'm just a guy living down West 4th Street, but I'm thinking masks don't work. A 74-year-old man walked out of the hospital on his own after spending 3 days in the hospital after testing positive for COVID without slowing down his workload and was never on a ventilator. You know what? The government cannot protect you from a virus forever.
But it's more than...
Most of their knowledge is idiotic fortune telling.
Come on, Carlos. He faked the whole thing. Come on. He was behind in the polls. He faked the whole thing. Come on. Get with the program.
Wrapped in totalitarianism.
Right. It's not
they can, however, strip you of your liberty and your livelihood if you let them. Because Democrats have been scaring Americans by completely safe pharmaceuticals to score cheap political points since COVID hit.
Look, don't take my word for it, right? Trust the experts. Trust the experts, right? Like, who are some of the experts we have to trust? How about the CDC? We're told to trust them, right? Well, the CDC director came out and said that school lockdowns are killing more kids than COVID, and that we need to immediately end school lockdowns. So the Democrats are the party of science, right? They trust, oh, no, wait, that's right, they're against the lockdowns. Or how about this? Dr. Fauci came out and said of the Woodward claims that actually Trump was telling the public what the experts were recommending that Trump tell the public. But no, don't trust those experts then. We can't trust them. Or how about this? The World Health Organization, Andrew Neil, who's one of the biggest, I don't know what you call him. He's basically like a C-SPAN type guy of the UK. He interviewed Dr. David Navarro, who's the World Health Organization's special envoy on COVID. And Dr. Navarro said that the position of the World Health Organization, now this is their point man for discussing this, the World Health Organization's position as of October 9th is countries should not be using lockdowns as the method for controlling COVID. He also says, and this is a very poignant quote, lockdowns have just one consequence that you must never belittle, and that is making poor people an awful lot poorer. That's the World Health Organization. That's what they're saying. Yet I'm told over and over again, if I question the lockdowns, I'm denying science. In fact, YouTube has censored some of my videos for calling out things that I've seen from people like Levine and Dr. Fauci for going against the experts. Now the World Health Organization is saying, don't embrace lockdowns. So will YouTube start censoring those that do embrace lockdowns because it's against the recommendations? The University of Edinburgh put out a paper saying that lockdowns not only are making countries poorer and killing more people from various causes, but it's actually going to lead to a net increase in deaths from COVID itself. That paper was signed on by over 1,000 medical experts. But we can't trust those scientists. This is what I'm talking about. People are told, basically, the left wants to destroy this country. They want to have permanent lockdowns so that they could win an election. That's why you hear Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in the debates repeatedly say, look at the economy now. Look at how terrible the economy is now. Meanwhile, they want more lockdowns. They want more of an increase in the burden on the economy. And yet, we're told that we have to accept that, and they're the side of science, and that couldn't be further from the truth. These are the people that told us. Every single one of you watching right now, and I've done this over and over and over again, every single one of you, regardless of what your background is, if you have no background in medicine, you knew that this virus would be most deadly to old people. So would any of you, if you were Secretary Levine, would any of you recommended putting COVID patients in with old people in nursing homes? Not one of you would have did that. But that's what the supposed expert did, thereby killing thousands of people in nursing homes in Pennsylvania alone. Same thing happened with Democratic governors all around the country. So what did they do? They started to withhold the data and change the data on how they determine nursing home deaths. So after they killed all these people in the nursing homes, they then looked at you, the healthy populace, and said, oh, sorry, you can't go to church, you can't go to work, you can't go to your daughter's wedding, because look how many people died. Yeah, because you killed them.
And you're diseased. You are diseased. So my question is, should that question that Rob posited with respect to Dr. Navarro be asked of Governor Wolf, Todd?
He won't answer it.
Keep asking it.
Secretary Levine won't answer it. They'll pivot. They'll go to something else.
Keep
and every
asking
time,
it. Right.
every time I've asked these type of questions, okay, they pivot.
But now this is something that came out as of yesterday. Next time you see the governor, you should ask that question, because as of October 9th, Dr. Navarro said that that's the policy. So keep asking it.
So
Moving on, because it's 12:44.
Give me 1 second, please.
Yep.
I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
Smile. You gotta smile.
I just need 1 second. I asked a question a week ago Monday.
Okay.
Right? So like 2 Mondays ago. Of
Live?
the governor, the last question
Live,
press
right?
conference.
The last time you saw him.
Yeah, it was the last time I saw him.
Right.
2 Mondays ago. And it was the last question of the press conference. It was, Governor, with your indoor limit of 25 people, are you going to expand the hours for in-person voting, or are you going to increase the number of people that can be indoors? I feel totally vindicated in this, because they came out and upgraded the guidance on outdoor and indoor capacity for primarily PIAA, and then the Eagles and the Steelers and pro and college and everything else, right? They updated those limits. Buried in the frequently asked questions attachment to the release, it said that polling places are exempt. Polling places are exempt from the indoor limit, but social distancing and mask guidance should be followed. Why will they not put that out in a press release on its own?
I don't know.
Let me just real quick sum this up. Just let me ask Todd and Carlos, you guys, this question. If Donald Trump would have used his position as president to have his executive facilities, or the executive power he had, make orders that we were forcing COVID patients in nursing homes, do you think the media would have blamed him for those deaths?
He would have been impeached.
Yeah, when we see the Democratic governors do this, they don't have a problem. They have a problem because Trump, after getting back 100 yards away from everyone, when he gets back to his house, the White House, and gets on a balcony, he took his mask off. We literally had Nancy Pelosi say, that may mean that he's crazy and we have to invoke the 25th Amendment, because he did that. He did things like that.
He's a strongman.
Right. They wanted to get rid of him for that. Imagine if instead of just saying the things Trump said, if he actually forced COVID patients into nursing homes. Yeah, when the left did that, and it's not just, here's what blows my mind.
That was what that commission about, that's what was that whole entire thing yesterday about the commission was right off the, that was a response from what happened in the balcony.
Right, and like, here's what blows my mind. It's not just Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and the media. It's people in my real life that I know. That when they'll sit here and they'll be like, well, if Trump would have just came out and been more for masks, that could have saved lives. And I'm like, okay, one, what about all the Democrats we've seen when the cameras were off without masks on? And second, why do you say nothing about the fact that your governor in your state here in Pennsylvania actually willfully put COVID-infected people in nursing homes, resulting in thousands of deaths? Do you have anything to comment on that? And it ranges from, that's not true, to, that's just a few deaths, who cares? The same people that will scream at the top of their lungs, Trump and masks! Trump and masks! My God! He went on a ride with the Secret Service while he was COVID infected.
Don't care about people being put into...
That's right. They don't care in the least bit.
All right, so we got to move on. Obama knew and supported the coup because otherwise it wouldn't have happened. Your thoughts on declassifications this week? DNI Grenell being
Ratcliffe.
Pardon me. No, I'm sorry. Ambassador Grenell being taken off of Twitter because he posted a ballot from a friend of his whose neighbor received the ballot and he's dead. So Twitter suspended him, and unless he takes a photo down, they're not going to bring him back. This is Rick Grenell, by the way, Ambassador Rick Grenell. But back to the classifications, it's now been proven that Obama knew and supported it. Otherwise, it would have never happened. Your thoughts, Todd, real quick.
If Barr is going to do what he's going to do, I don't see how you don't have Obama and Biden as persons of interest in the investigation and have them face, at least a deposition.
Right. So the declassifications aren't going to stop. Barr might not release any reports, but the declassifications are coming. And just yesterday, or maybe it was the day before yesterday, Rob, Secretary Pompeo said that he has the 33,000 emails and he's going to release them.
They've been saying that for years.
This, and I'm telling you right now, this is what the left fears the most, is that you're finally going to get a real look behind the curtain of all the nonsense that's gone on. If I may, before handing off to Robert on the same thing.
Yeah, but Robert doesn't agree with you. Robert says that there's no hope. So do the declassifications make any difference?
There's an adage, man, and I'm telling you, Democrats, when they have the power, they know how to wield it. And for whatever reason, the Republicans don't, until the new guy showed up and started to tear down all of the deep state stuff that's been going on and say, you know what? I don't need the job. I don't need the job. I'm here to do the right thing by the American people. And they're losing their minds over it.
But it won't matter. It won't matter. And here's why. They could release an email tomorrow from Barack Obama saying, I want to break the law and corruptly spy on Donald Trump. Send every FBI agent. Do whatever you can. Make up stuff. Contact our specific allies in the media. Signed, notarized by Barack Obama. If no one goes to jail, it doesn't matter. Here's what would happen when that happens. The media go, it's not a big deal. Understand that Obama was concerned about Russia interfering. We know that Russia interfered. We know that. We know that Trump's team had connections to Russians. So Obama was absolutely correct to be concerned. And this isn't a big deal. Now, anyways, on to the next Trump thing. And they control 90% of the narrative. That will be the narrative. The average person, there'll be people like me and you that will be like, my God, this is corrupt. The average person will be, did anybody get locked up? That's just another piece of garbage in a story that's been going on for 4 years that I can't even follow anymore. Anyways, I can't go to work because of COVID. That's what the average person will say. It's too late. It's too late to just say, well, we're declassifying and we'll show people. People should have been locked up. Now, it won't matter. And this, by the way, I remember watching Joe DiGenova, who's a lawyer, him and Victoria Tenzing, that are husband and wife, that were one of Trump's biggest allies working on all this. I remember listening to him a year ago saying, well, actually, no one will really get locked up for this, but it'll be enough to make the public aware. How's that going? Like, for example, it's public knowledge that it's the left burning down all these cities, right? And? Does it matter? No. Because the narrative shifted to it's white supremacists. It's the Proud Boys.
Right.
Even though it's not reality.
And Biden's up 14 points. This is the thing that I asked. If the left supports all this anarchy, how can Biden be up 14 points?
Well, again, I think
he's not.
Right. I think those polls are garbage. But it doesn't matter. If they control all of the... Carlos, do you think the average person, if you talk to the average person, for example, do you think that they're down with what they see Black Lives Matter doing? They're not.
Right. The average person doesn't know the difference between a U.S. rep and a state rep.
Right. But guess what? When they're in public, what are they going to say about Black Lives Matter?
They support it.
Right. So even if the majority of people are against it, because the left controls all these institutions, they don't want to be pariahs. So they publicly say, no, we support you. If there's this large silent majority and they don't win the vote, they'll remain silent. So if hypothetically the election could be stolen, what would change? You think people would rise up? Did they rise up when their cities were being burned down?
You could cow them in public, but can you cow them in the privacy of the voters' booth? In your opinion, honestly.
What, say again?
You could cow them in public, the average American, to say that they support Black Lives Matter. But can you cow them in the voters' booth?
So I did a video, it'll take me like 2 minutes to describe this, but I did this video about this post I saw and a snippet of a book I read, and it was about the North Korean War. And how North Korea would have POWs from America, but then China got some of them. And China's prisoner of war camps were incredibly nice to the U.S. prisoners. North Korea was kind of way harsher. And one of the things that China would do was they came up with this great idea where they would provide incentive. They had essay contests to the prisoners of war. And they would give out a small prize, like a bag of rice. And they would say, your essay is, come up with one thing you'd like to see better about the United States. Sounds harmless. So people would say it, right? And they'd get a small gift. Now, it was important that the gift was small. That way the prisoners didn't feel they were coerced into making this statement. But sure, it's honest. There are things you'd like to see better with the United States. And then incrementally, they would ask them, defend something about, communist China. What's one good thing there? Oh, okay. The next thing you know, they had them for small gifts, saying some of the most heinous things that they could believe about the United States or great things about the communist government of China. And what they found was that when people wrote that down, their real-life perceptions changed to match what they had written down. That's what we see going on. It's that sort of propaganda effort. When you force people to say, yeah, this is a systemically racist country, over and over in public, they start believing it. And so the question is, yeah, in the immediate nature, you could say, well, just because they're publicly saying one thing doesn't mean that's how it'll be at the ballot box. But it might. It might have gotten to that point already where because you look around and you say, holy cow, the whole world thinks that I'm privileged because I'm white. The whole world thinks I'm responsible for original sin because I'm white. The whole world thinks it's okay to burn down buildings if it's in the name of Black Lives Matter. They all think it's appropriate to violate social distancing orders if it's for Black Lives Matter. So that must be right. I'm going to join in on that crowd even in my private life. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
So they got Jennifer Lake to say this for a small bag of rice?
I think she would have done it for free.
Final comments, Todd.
So there's movement in the Myrtle Beach case, and I can't get into great detail on it, other than to say there's a lot going on behind the scenes in that case. So stay tuned to TalkWilliamsport.com. There'll be multiple stories coming out, most likely this week, on that case.
Right. Search warrants have been served in the Myrtle Beach case in Williamsport, correct?
And other places, but yes, primarily in Williamsport.
All right.
Yeah.
What else?
And what I would say to everybody is, having attended any number of sporting events recently, we're starting to get back to normal. Right?
Yeah.
It's time to start getting back to living your lives and not being in fear of the coronavirus. Be vigilant is what I would say to you.
Right.
Right? Just be vigilant. Protect your family, protect others. Just be vigilant. And we'll get through it, just like the president did. He recovered 3 days, said he felt the best he's felt in 20 years.
Yeah.
And now, he's got empirical knowledge that not a lot of people have.
Yeah.
He can cure everybody because he's got antibodies.
Stop your nonsense. You're just being hopeful. Rob, final comments.
Look, the single issue that's the most easy for the American people to understand of the corruption of the Biden-Harris Democratic Party is this. Will they pack the Supreme Court? Understand what this means. It is effectively the ruination of one of the three co-equal branches of government. We already know that Congress is basically worthless. So if the court also becomes worthless, then whoever has the presidency controls everything. That should scare each and every one of us. It's literally the end of our democratic republic. In case you're wondering, this is how it would work. Whoever wins the presidency and has enough support in the House would just approve adding, there's 9 justices now? We need 6 more Democrats. Let's add to 15 justices. Then those people, any unconstitutional law or order that's passed by the Congress or the president would just be signed off on by the packed court. It is literally an issue that is about destroying the foundational documents of this country and making them worthless. Destroying the co-equal branches of government. That's being proposed right now by serious people on the Democratic side. Joe Biden refuses to answer that, as does Kamala Harris, as to whether or not he will do this. Joe Biden has said in the past that he realized it would be a bonehead move and it would destroy the independence of the court. So he knows what the consequences are. He said yesterday that he would not tell members of the press whether or not he plans on stacking the court. Because if he did, it would become a news headline. Now, any credible journalist, regardless of who you're voting for or what your political beliefs are, would say, doesn't this make my job obsolete? Is this how presidential candidacies will be from now on? Candidate just standing up saying, I'm not going to tell you any of my positions because if I did, you would report on them. So vote for me and you'll find out what I think. Is that why do we even need a press corps then? What is their job? Yet they won't even stand up. They just act like this is okay. And so now, today, and what's happened just right before we went on, Joe Biden was asked again, don't you think the American people deserve to know if you'll pack the courts? And he said, no, they don't deserve to know. That's what Joe Biden thinks of you. In arguably the most important position, he's saying, you don't have the right to know what I'll do. So they're more concerned about seeing Trump's tax returns because they think the American people have a right to know that, something that's irrelevant to actually being a leader and a president in this country. But when it comes to the actual things they'll do, like, destroying the country, you don't have a right to know that. And this is indicative of everything about the Democratic Party. They are radical. They're lying to you. Why would you believe Joe Biden on any issue? You know why he won't tell you. Because he's afraid if he's honest, it will isolate moderates or it'll isolate the extremist in his party. So you know that everything that he's saying is merely a political calculation and not what he really believes. You should reject this in the strongest possible terms. And then when it gets to COVID and all these other hoaxes, in fact, the heck with COVID. Let's just talk about one other thing. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris admitted that the reason that Joe Biden entered this race was because Trump called Nazis good people. That's a lie. I have people in my chat saying, don't you think it's dangerous to talk about potential voter fraud if you don't have proof? Meanwhile, these people stand up and applaud when Joe Biden says that Trump called Nazis good people. And as a result, we've seen 220 locations that have been lit on fire by Black Lives Matter. We see people that are issuing threats to Trump supporters and Trump because they think he's an actual Nazi. Even though it's been debunked over and over again that this statement never happened. The core of the Joe Biden presidency is based on a lie, falsely smearing someone as a racist, as a Nazi. If this isn't rejected, your politics of the future will be just like the Yelp story we did. If your neighbor brands you as a racist, you're a racist. Your life's over. That's all that will matter. So this needs to be rejected. It is corruption of the highest order, and it's seeking to destroy the working class and the middle class of this country to usher in a new age of communism and globalism so that every one of us is dependent on the government and we have no independence.
Thank you. Because of, the things that are going on, I try to stay educated on what's happening, and of course this Marxist revolution, which is really what it is, interests me. So I'd begun to study it, and one of the things that I came across was a quote by Simon Leys, who is a preeminent Australian Western chronicler of Mao's Cultural Revolution. And this is a quote that kind of got my attention. The everyday order of our lives may seem to us natural and permanent, but it is in fact as fragile and illusionary as the cardboard props on a theatrical stage. It can collapse in a flash and turn at once into black horror. Our condition is forever precarious. Even basic human decency can shatter and vanish in an instant. So as I think about that quote, and it's a really powerful quote, the only message the left really has is to dramatically change the demographics by opening up borders and providing incentives to illegal aliens to gain their support, to pack the Supreme Court with activist judges, and if they can control the presidency and the Senate, to eliminate the Electoral College, to eliminate the filibuster, to add the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico as states and use those demographics to add 4 additional Democratic senators so they can control the Senate forever. They can't win on agenda and policy, but they can change the rules. These are merely schemes for one-party rule, and so much for it being democratic, huh? The only way to fight them is through organization and legal action, and to fight back, to push back. The people who are suffering the most in this country are the people the Democrats, for my entire lifetime, claim most they represent. We know how that's turned out, right? There will never be anything that President Trump can do to be recognized as a good and beneficial thing. How's that mathematically possible? What are you prepared to do about it? That's the object of our show. I'd like to invite you in the next 3 or 4 weeks to listen to our show, because we will be having some interesting content that you will not see anywhere else in the state of Pennsylvania, politically. And I can tell you that next week's guest, we will have Lycoming County Republican Chairman Vince Matteo, newly minted Lycoming County Republican Chairman Vince Matteo, join us for about an hour to talk politics locally here in the Pennsylvania 12th District that is currently represented by the Honorable Representative Fred Keller. So join us, because we will have a lot of neat surprises. Until then, we'll see you next week.